How often should you post on social media? Before I answer that question, I want to say that for most companies, the problem is not that they're not posting enough. It's that they're not focusing enough on high quality content and finding the right mode of distribution for that content. And typically, distribution or reach is controlled by small groups of people that we refer to in network science as gatekeepers. So, journalists, for example, executives at big firms that have access to tons of customers, super influencers on social media. These are really where you should be focusing so that you can get a lot of distribution for high quality content that you create. And I just want to point out this quote here from Mr. Beast, the #1 YouTuber. It's much easier to get 5 million views on one video than 100,000 views on 50 videos. So really, this is an argument in favor of quality over quantity. Now, not everyone agrees with this philosophy. One of the reasons I agree with it is because that's what the research shows. But you look at people like Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozi, they have this philosophy of frequency. Just focus on cranking out more and more content. But personally, I think you're better off concentrating on a few critical pieces of content and distributing them as widely as possible through gatekeepers, through collaborators. But now that I've addressed that, let's get to the reality of how to post on each social media channel. Now, we have some research and advice here from Hootsuite, which is a social media marketing authority. And they say that on Instagram, you post between 3 and 5 times per week, Instagram stories 2 times per day, Twitter 2 and 3 times per day, Facebook 1 to 2 times per day, LinkedIn 1 to 2 times per day, TikTok 3 and 5 times per week, Pinterest 1 time per week, Google My Business at least 1 time per week. Now, obviously, this is going to vary depending on the industry, depending on who your audience is. For YouTube, for example, I think a general rule of thumb would be once per week. But if you're investing a lot of money into a blockbuster video, then you may not be able to do that once per week. It may make more sense to do that once per month. Or if you're able to keep your standards very high, then you might do it a few times per week. With YouTube Shorts, you might want to consider doing it perhaps once per day. Now, there's also a difference here depending on what kind of value you're creating. So if it's entertainment industry is much more preferential to blockbuster. So having one big hit, one big movie, one big post, because you need to break through a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise in entertainment because everything's your competition. Whereas if your value is more around education, then you don't necessarily need to focus that much on a blockbuster hit. You can diversify a bit more. Now, the other big consideration here is the various portfolio of content that you're delivering to different people at different stages of the funnel. So for example, if you're trying to influence C-suite executives at very large companies, they're going to want to hear about thought leadership, about emerging big trends. They don't want to hear about specific problems and specific solutions. It's much more high level. And of course, when you're operating at that higher level, you don't necessarily need a high frequency of information. You want a more collected thought on the emerging trend. Whereas when you're evaluating a product, you need a lot of information very quickly to assess whether that purchase is compatible with other purchases that you've already made. Does this integrate with the infrastructure that you've set up? Lots of considerations like that. Now, as to when specifically you're going to post is going to vary depending on a certain few things. So, for example, the seasonality of your product. Well, if people only buy it around Christmas time or Halloween, then you're going to be posting a lot more during certain times of the year, like October, etc. Now, the other thing is if you're marketing an entertainment product like a novel or a video game or a movie, then the launch period is going to be very important. But for other products, it's more about marketing evenly throughout the year because they aren't distorted a lot by seasonal effects, and the launch period really isn't that important or any more special than any other time of the year. So let's look at some general guidelines here. On Facebook, it would be Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Now, you're going to have to adjust this depending on if you're geographically located in the Balkans and that's where most of your customers are, then this probably doesn't make any sense for you. So adjust it based on your time zone, adjust it based on your industry. Instagram, Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, Twitter, 9 a.m. Pacific, LinkedIn, 1 p.m. Pacific, and TikTok, 1 p.m. Pacific. So those are some tactical approaches you can take about the frequency in which you post and the time in which you post. But really, I think what you should focus most of your attention on is how to get wide distribution. So using things like adding a lot of hashtags and, more importantly, collaborating with gatekeepers. And you can identify who those gatekeepers are, those journalists, those influencers, etc., by using the website SparkToro. With SparkToro, what you do is you put in who your target audience is, and then the software will spit out the people that are most influential, and it'll also have a breakdown of their influence in different social media channels, such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, etc.